Greetings, citizens of the world. We are anonymous.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've tuned into Stranger Than Fiction News, broadcasting live from the dark side of the planet. A massive earthquake has rocked Osaka, Japan. Hundreds have been injured, many killed. You're seeing some of the footage. We've grabbed all the footage that we can, but it seems like there should be more, and we're not seeing it. Something is amiss, and what we've been able to discover here, ladies and gentlemen, is that there are tons of nuclear reactors just a stone's throw away from Osaka. And we learned in the Fukushima disaster that they were hiding stuff all the way until the very end. Now, this 6.1 earthquake is a little less powerful than the one that rocked Fukushima. But it wasn't the earthquake that did Fukushima in. It was the tidal wave. Undoubtedly, there has been no tidal wave in this particular earthquake. But it makes you wonder what's really going on out there in Osaka. It makes you wonder what's going on in these nuclear power plants and Fukushima. We're going to be talking about Fukushima. We're going to be talking about the big news, as well as mesmerizing you with the latest footage from Osaka. This is basically how the news does it, but they product place Luciferian ideologies. Here at Stranger Than Fiction News, we try to do the opposite of that. We try to focus on what's going on in the conservative world, what's going on in the Christian world, what are we seeing as issues. And undoubtedly, when you see a massive nuclear disaster like in Fukushima, you have to wonder if there isn't something else going on. They put all of these nuclear reactors near the fault lines, waiting for it to explode. I mean, they put them in the worst possible places. And of course, they always have to be near a waterway, ladies and gentlemen. They always have to be near a waterway. That way they can dump all of their toxic, waste right there into the water so that you can drink it or eat it with fish. Fukushima fish. And everybody got hit by this Fukushima thing. You remember where you were that fateful day in 2011 when you saw the tidal waves coming in on the television? And then came the disaster. Do you remember that? It only took a day for the radiation cloud to circulate around the world. Pretty much. People were talking about nuclear fallout in the rain, in the aftermath. And since then, they've dumped billions and trillions of gallons of radioactive waste into the Pacific. They were basically flooding the reactor and draining it right into the ocean. Everybody's seen the maps. It's rather concerning. We've got a map of Japan itself with all of its nuclear reactors. Now, the earthquake itself happened in Osaka. In any case, somewhere around there. Osaka might actually be right there. We're not Japanese. But you can see all these radioactive nuclear power plants in this area. So whether it be here or here, it doesn't really make much of a difference when you see all of these nuclear power plants. And of course, everybody remembers Fukushima. And it seemed kind of ironic that it was like, fuck you in there. F-U-K-U, Shima. You couldn't make this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen. That's why it's Stranger Than Fiction News. Major disaster in Osaka right now. Massive earthquake rocks the city. And going through an earthquake is pretty traumatic. When you're seeing everything, around you just basically shake off the walls, tumble, and fall. Lighting, books, papers, sometimes buildings. We saw an earthquake in Mexico, look at that. Look at that. We saw an earthquake in Mexico not that long ago that was about the same size as this earthquake in Osaka. And it basically, it rocked Mexico City. There were buildings that just basically turned into dust. And it was a major earthquake. even at this 6-7 level. But Japan is a little better prepared than Mexico when it comes to, look at that. They're a little bit better prepared when it comes to earthquakes, so their buildings don't turn into dust. We got reports that trains started operating fairly quickly thereafter. You know, it's not like it was 20, 30 years ago with the Kobe earthquake where everything basically was on fire. We've got some footage of that, but you know, Japan is it's kind of like California in the sense that the big one might hit at any time. And California's been pretty quiet lately. You have to wonder, I mean, you know, they're overdue. They're way overdue for a major big one. I mean, how many people would like to see California literally split from the rest of us? It could happen. And they're overdue. That's all we can say. But major quake in Osaka, hundreds injured, many killed, and there are nuclear reactors all around this disaster area. And you know, what we learned from Fukushima was that they're not going to be talking about what's happening in these nuclear reactors if they can get away with it. They weren't able to get away with it in Fukushima because the things just completely blew up. I think we've got some footage of the Fukushima reactor, the plant. I mean, these things blew sky high. It was like the worst case scenario times 3. They had 3 nuclear reactors melt down, blow up, blew these buildings to shreds just from the hydrogen gas that builds up in the containment vessel. And then the core melted, like through the concrete, through the containment, through the building, and probably into the aquifers. And they were picking up radiation in Tokyo. They were picking up radiation everywhere. And they weren't telling people about it. And this is what usually happens in a nuclear catastrophe. When Chernobyl hit in 1986, April 26, 1986, we've covered Chernobyl because it looked very suspicious. But the gas cloud of highly nuclear waste was drifting over Europe, falling out, and the authorities there were like, "Oh no, you're okay, you're safe. Don't worry about it." But the fallout was huge. And this is typical. Like when there's a disaster, when something's wrong, the television lies to you. They're like, "Everything's okay. You know, shelter in place. Shelter in place. Everything's okay." That's what they usually say, ladies and gentlemen. And that's what makes us really suspicious about what's going on with these events. They can say that everything's okay on the television, but they're always lying about it. Just like the way they lied about these weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Remember that? How come nobody went to jail for that? And then it turned out that Obama was protecting and funding ISIS. That came out in the DOD papers. That's really weird. The television doesn't go after the criminals. They go after the whistleblowers. They go after the do-gooders. That's what the television does. It's like they live. If you're just joining us, massive earthquake rocks Osaka, Japan, ladies and gentlemen. And there are a bunch of nuclear reactors nearby. We've got the map here for you. You can see there's nuclear reactors everywhere. The Osaka Bay, right near Kyoto, is basically surrounded by nuclear reactors. So now the question is, what's going on over there? Could it be anything like Fukushima? And what's really crazy about this situation is they always put the nuclear reactors right near the fault lines. Not just in Japan, but like all of them are just waiting to explode. Now, we're not going to have the nuclear energy debate and how much cleaner it is than, fossil fuels, for example. How much more efficient. It's just, can they contain these doom weapons or not? Look at Fukushima. Think of the billions of gallons of radioactive waste that was dumped into the oceans. There's no telling what kind of damage that's doing. We know we're picking up traces in California and the West Coast. People are eating fish with a little bit of radiation, but they're telling you everything's okay. There is no safe level of radiation, ladies and gentlemen. No safe level at all. We were covering the lava flow yesterday. Did you see this lava flow from Hawaii. Look how fast it's going. Look at the people that are just above the car. They're walking back to their car. This is in real time. This isn't like time lapse. It's pretty intense things happening in the world, ladies and gentlemen. Pretty intense indeed. And, you know, we're just waiting for the big one to hit California. They're way overdue. But in the meantime, major quake rocks Osaka. Hundreds injured, many killed. Fears of new Fukushima near the epicenter. Fukushima. You know, the first time I saw that, I thought they were telling me, fuck you. No offense, ladies and gentlemen. F-U-K-U. And then I was like, oh, that's just Japanese for something near Tokyo. But when Fukushima blew, it was spraying nuclear waste everywhere. Everywhere. All of Japan got hit. These buildings blew. It was like the worst case scenario. 3 reactors melt down, blow up, spew radioactive materials everywhere. It drifts in the wind. They're pumping water into the reactors to try to keep it cool. And all of that water is getting just like dumped directly into the Pacific. And they're finding traces onto the West Coast and the fish, and you know, it was raining everywhere. It was raining radioactive stuff everywhere in the days after Fukushima. This is some of the aftermath. These reactors just blew like a bomb hit them. You know what I mean? And that's like a nuclear reactor. It's not like, you know, an empty warehouse. And we should have brought in some of the footage of the mushroom clouds, but it looked like a fission reaction where it was like a runaway core, and this thing was just, you know, going. It was the exact same type of thing. The dirtiest of dirty bombs that you could possibly imagine. 3 of them went off and contaminated the world. And nobody wants to talk about it. You know, you don't want to think about what Fukushima's actually putting in the air, but it's basically hot particles. And that turns it into a lottery system out there. Because these hot particles, you know, can drift for months, years, depending on the isotope. And they're just drifting. You can't see them. You suck it in. You know, you inhale that thing. Stays with you for life. Keeps, you know, it keeps like emitting this hot particle. At the cellular level, that's enough to start a chain reaction. And there are billions of these hot particles, trillions, countless numbers of hot particles dispersed in the air, spread around the world. A huge catastrophe, a huge disaster. But people never want to talk about the disasters anymore. You know, it's kind of like that BP oil spill. They don't ever want to talk about that stuff anymore. But I remember, you know, what was it, over a month? It was just stuff coming out of it non-stop. Disaster. All the people, you know, think of all the fish that people were eating contaminated with all these chemicals. It gets worse, though. It gets worse. They're now irrigating fruits and vegetables in California with recycled frack water. You got to think about that. You got to think about what they're actually feeding people these days. Those GMOs, the pesticides, the antibiotics, the growth hormones. It's like they're out to get you. It's like they're out to get you. No wonder people are looking at these Georgia Guidestones sideways. Like, what's going on over here? That's besides the point, ladies and gentlemen, but definitely you want to check that out. Look at this footage. You know, an earthquake is no laughing matter. I don't know how many of you have been through it, like been through an earthquake, but it's pretty intense. Even like a 3.0, a little baby one, it's intense, man. You know, it makes you wonder about a lot of things. And some people will actually wake up before the earthquake. It's really weird. That's what happened to me one time. I actually woke up in the middle of the night, and then a 3.0 hit, and it sounded like a monster roaring through the mountains. It's happened, you know, near a mountain range. It is an experience. And to see something like this, so devastating, so huge, I mean, it must shock people to the core. I don't know how people in Japan or even California, you know, deal with this kind of thing. Would you want to live in California knowing that at any moment, you know, the big one could hit? Have you ever seen any of the footage of the San Francisco earthquake in 1906? Oh, that was real nice. It looked like, you know, the scenes out of World War II, like Berlin, Germany. I mean, everything was just done. Done. Every building gone. Fires everywhere. It was like, you know, But there was a lot of black and white footage from back then. You can check it out, and you know, you can see in the aftermath, there's nothing left, but you still had people all like proper, like, you know, in their suit and ties, nice hats, everything, just like, you know, walking up and down the streets doing one thing or the other. It was a time when like the horse and carriage was face to face with the first automobile. How many people out there would have liked to have seen that for themselves? Must have been interesting. Big one could hit at any time. California separated from the United States forever. Imagine, we wouldn't be that lucky. I don't think we'd be that lucky. But there's a lot of talk about getting rid of California. All of those people out there. Have you seen Nancy Pelosi and Maxine Waters? Some of those people that represent them? It's like the craziest of the crazy people like make it to Congress. It's fantastic. And all of the stuff like that comes out of California, like, you know, their television, their shows, it's all Sodom and Gomorrah. It's all New Babylon. It's all New World Order. It's bad news. Even the Disney cartoons, they're putting in phallic symbols and naked people for the kids. It's like when they send in the gender dysphoric to the preschools and to, you know, the elementary schools to talk about your little kids, to talk to your little kids about, you know, sex, being sexualized by gender dysphoric people. And gender dysphoria, remember, is still a mental disorder. It's pretty interesting, you know, California, get rid of them. And it's funny, the WHO today, just which is the World Health Organization, the WHO, like Doctor Who. Doctor Who announced today that video games are officially an addiction. You might be able to get benefits soon for your addiction to video games and live the fat life out there in the Socialist Republic of California. We'll see. Because, you know, it kind of suits their purpose. If you play video games, you get dumb, you get fat, you know, you're not paying attention, and you know, I think they want to push that as a way to get compensated. You know, you've got an addiction. It's not your fault. Well, it's somebody's fault. You know, and they're out there in Silicon Valley, which is like right next to San Francisco, the heartland of Sodom and Gomorrah. You want to know why California is starting to look like hell on earth, just like Hawaii? It's because these people have lost their way, hardcore. To them, like, evil is good, good is evil, men are women, women are men. What do you guys think about that? We got a lot of haters out there. Better go check out Rachel Madcow on NBC then. You better go find your way back over there. Love the trolls. Love watching people lose their minds in the comments. If you're just joining us, we're covering this massive earthquake that has rocked Osaka. Hundreds injured, many killed. And while it could have been worse, it was still a huge deal here for these people. You can't imagine the fright. At least it didn't happen in the middle of the night. But they got lucky on this one, but it's still a highly active area. There'll be, you know, aftershocks for some time to come. And as these tectonic plates shift from location to location, you know, it relieves pressure in one place and then builds up pressure in another place. So we'll have to see when the next big one hits out there in Japan. We saw a big one hit Mexico not that long ago. Major damage over there. Of course, they don't have quite the same infrastructure as the Japanese, but similar quakes, massive damage, huge volcano eruption in Guatemala. Time stood still in one little volcanic village right next to it, and basically they were buried alive like Pompeii. Now, with this major earthquake in Osaka, ladies and gentlemen, it's bringing up new concerns about the nuclear power plants out there. There's a bunch of nuclear power plants near Osaka, and you know, when Fukushima happened, they didn't really tell people about what was going on. It was only when they couldn't hide it anymore that we actually got some information. We're going to be bringing in our all-star cast here for further updates and to cover other top news stories that are happening around the world and, of course, in the United States. Going to want to talk about the politics. There's going to be a very heated debate at the Senate Judiciary Committee today when Inspector General Horowitz and FBI Director Christopher Wray are going to show up for questioning live. We're going to be covering that. That's scheduled at 2 p.m. Eastern, which is somewhere in the vicinity of an hour and a half from now. So we'll try and cover that. We've got Yosef from the Holy Land joining us live. Yosef, what's going on? What do you think of this latest development in Osaka?
Well, it reminds me of what happened with my uncle, which is actually the chief rabbi of Japan, Rabbi Binyamin Edery, which when there was the earthquake and the nuclear plant leak, he went out there to the thousands of misplaced people, and he spent hours driving back and forth, bringing food and clothing, and they put him on the national TV, and they actually, after the anniversary, the year of all the destruction, the country got together to mourn the passing of all those who died, and there were many priests and many spiritual leaders that wanted to speak, but the president or the leader there said, I'm going to let the rabbi speak because he's the only one who actually was out there. Of course, my uncle had to put on special gear not to be in touch as much as possible with the radiation, and he had to go back to the United States for about 3 months to drink milk in order to detoxify all the radiation that he got. But he did what he had to do as a religious person, as an Orthodox Jew, and he was there when people needed him, and I commend him. And the situation, of course, there's natural disasters. There are, in Japan in general, spiritually, if we are STFN News, spiritually, they don't know what charity is, and it's from both sides, because the people there aren't used to asking for help, and that's why the suicide rate in Japan is very, very high. Because if someone, let's say, crashes his car, his entire life, flashes before him. Even if he's not dead, he says, okay, I spent so much money on this car, that's it, my life is ending, I have no one to turn to, I have nowhere to go, I have nothing to do. And that's why the suicide rate is so high, because there's no concept of charity. Concept of charity doesn't exist there. That's why my uncle had to bring that concept of charity, the goodness and kindness that we find in the Old Testament and Judaism, and that America does very well, especially the Christian community. So I'm happy that my people like my uncle were able to help. Of course, it's a sad day, and of course, once again, us here at STFN News encourage all those who can help to help in the ways that they can. Thank you, Ron.
Absolutely. When a disaster like this strikes, it's an opportunity for people to do good deeds and to help out. And for many people that are around the world looking at disasters like this, you might be asking yourself, well, what can you do to help? Should you donate to a charity? And you got to check these charities out, because a lot of them are basically taking the money and spending it on administrative fees instead of actually delivering on the ground. And we've seen this in disaster after disaster. Fortunately, the Japanese seem well equipped to be able to rebuild after a situation like this, and they have the emergency facilities to take care of the people that are out there. So I don't think there's really a whole lot that we can do other than to send our thoughts and prayers and hope for the best out there. And of course, the Japanese way of life is much different from our own, and they hold honor to a much higher regard, and I think that might be one of the reasons why there's such high rates of suicide over there. And even the littlest things can set them off because it's deemed dishonorable. It's not a perfect society. There's no perfect society out there. But I think they, for a lot of things they do well, and for other things, well, you can always just keep on giving support and good thoughts. We've got Danny Ray here live from Righteous Defiance. What do you think so far of this disaster in Osaka?
It's just one of those things that seems these are showing us what time it is. It's definitely one of those reminders to constantly stay prepared. Obviously, like you said, these people, it's not their first walk in the park as far as earthquakes are concerned, but each of us live in a different region, and we all need to remember that being prepared for the type of climatic weather or natural disasters, these type of things that regularly occur where you live. It's really important to not only have enough for you, but some of your neighbors as well, and try our best. I think we stress this a lot. We try to anyway, to be on guard and always have other supplies that others around you might need. Get out in your community and try to organize things just in case something like this were to happen, in your neck of the woods. Maybe not an earthquake, maybe hurricane preparedness or tornado preparedness, whatever, wherever the weather is climatic in your area, what it's like outside. So again, all we can do is pray for these people, because it seems as if they know how to bounce back rather quickly after how much they've been through out there, right?
Yeah, a lot of things to say there. I mean, obviously be prepared if you live in one of these potential disaster areas, and everybody seems to be affected by something potentially. It might be earthquakes or tornadoes or hurricanes and the like. So it's one of those things where you basically have to be prepared if you can be, and when disaster strikes, help out the best you can. At least say some prayers for these people. It can't hurt, and obviously, that's an issue out there in Japan. They're not a Christian country, and it seems like they've had their brush with ultimate tyranny. I think if you look back to the World War II days, it was basically that kind of cult tyranny that had taken over and drive them to basically want to crush other countries and kill other people. And it's makes you wonder about Fukushima and a lot of other things, to be quite honest, as well as their advances in technology. They're going to be a player in the Skynet thing, undoubtedly, and again, it's in the hands of non-Christians, and I think that should be a concern. As these societies evolve, and as technology evolves, this technology is going to be in the hands of, potentially anti-Christians, and that's always something that we want to, stress, especially when you see the developments out there in Silicon Valley and the like. Of course, that's right there at the epicenter of Sodom and Gomorrah, San Francisco. So, I mean, you just couldn't ask for a worse, kind of setup there. Now, if you're just joining us, we're covering this, massive quake that has rocked Osaka, hundreds injured, many killed, with fears of a new Fukushima near the epicenter. There are many nuclear reactors near Osaka, as you can see on this map, and the Osaka Bay is right there near Kyoto, and they've got a reputation for massive earthquakes over there. Makes you wonder, is there going to be another Fukushima potentially? And it begs the question, why do they put so many nuclear reactors in zones, in hot zones? And it seems like they're always putting them on fault lines or, something similar. What do you think out there, Josef? Why do you think they've got all of these nuclear reactors near fault lines? And, what can we say about nuclear reactors in terms of religious eschatology?
Well, thanks, Ron, again for having me on the show. The nuclear concept, which is to divide the atom. Atom in Hebrew is like Adam, which is Adam, like Adam and Eve, and it's basically when you're going down into the smallest of creation, the core of creation, you find the godliness, and you want to split that into two, which is basically you want to bring the oneness of the creation into two, and that creates a big energy. That's like the spirituality of how it sounds, and it also develops into the physical world. I want to look at it for a moment spiritually, and then we'll get back to the physical. Everything in this world eventually goes back to its source, becomes one with its creation, one with its creator. And the atom is basically the human being, taking a microscope and zooming into creation all the way, looking for the soul. And then he tries to split that soul. And that creates a very big energy. And that energy is uh, that energy is very powerful, because what it's really doing kabbalistically is it's making God look at the details in the world. In other words, it's dividing things, so to speak, in this world and giving a different look at what's happening in this world. Now, physically, now again, for those who didn't understand, when you take the soul of something and you divide it, you're basically making, so to speak, the creator look at the world and say, I shouldn't look at everything the same. I should look at it differently. Judge the good versus the evil. You know, go down to their level and help them in their situation, which is a very good thing. But at the same time, physically speaking, to relate to the question of putting these kind of reactors in dangerous places and so on and so forth, that is something that is you know, in our hands. In the Bible, there's a commandment, we have to be careful to protect our souls and to be very, very careful and to watch over our conduct in the world. And definitely, if these people want to go in the ways of God, or anyone that's thinking of building factories or doing this kind of stuff, if you want to go in the moral and ethical way of what God says in the Bible, then you have to make sure that you're not endangering lives, and this is something that has to be taken into consideration. Better be safe than sorry. As far as what's happening now and the situation that Japan is in, I truly hope that it's not going to be like last time, because last time it took years, and I don't even know if they still recovered from last time, the damage that was done.
No, they still have a lot of cleanup and everything over there. They're constantly melting down reactors, and they're still trying to fix it. It's really sad too, because I've heard people who are fishermen out on the Pacific. They've said how it seems as if the ocean is dead out there after all of the contamination, and we know that we have like giant floating seas of plastic and garbage and stuff that was swept out after the last time that they had a giant wave come through. But it's really sad to see these sort of things happen, but it is as if they're done on purpose. You can actually go through, just check in your area where there's a nuclear facility, and it's probably not very far off of a fault line, or if not right on it. I've actually lived in a couple of places. Up in Maryland was one of them, where it was right next to a fault line. It wasn't a very active fault line, of course, because it's up at the top of the Appalachian chain, but it is there nonetheless. And so all it would take is one big one for all of the tiny ones out there that really don't ever have any activity to have something to happen. And I've just always been one who sees the world like a better place without nuclear energy. There's so many different options that we really could have ultimately, and it would be better for all of us, as far as like contaminating chemicals and killing the rivers and the water and everything that these plants sit on, the wildlife and everything. Like, it would just be better for the whole planet in general. But with how greed works, they've found a way to make money off of things that are really dangerous for us. If it's not, these chemical factories and all of their wastes, say like the aluminum factory, they have plenty of waste, and a majority of that gets dumped into your public drinking water. It's aluminum fluoride and stuff like that. They're constantly trying their best to depopulate us in any way, shape, or form. And we know that a lot of these things, earthquakes and so on, can be generated by some of the machines that they have too. And so ultimately, it's just a war against us. It's a war against the people. So we have to make sure that we're always looking out for our neighbors and being prepared ourselves. This is something that I really can't stress enough in times like these. Joseph? No? Okay, well, I guess I can jump on to some other news since It seems like I've been left alone here. Reminding me this morning of how Trey Gowdy was acting a couple of weeks ago, talking about how he didn't see anything as far as FBI was concerned. It seems like something has snapped Trey Gowdy back into reality, and I believe it was probably the release of that IG report. It sounds like he's definitely backtracked, and he's back in the saddle again. He's saying how there was major bias with this report, and the FBI cover-up is very apparent, and he was pretty much on his way to throwing Comey back under the bus. And we have 49 more arrests in child traffickers in Colorado. I don't know if anybody else caught that, but it seems like bust after bust in city after city, and they're definitely cleaning the scum off the streets. I think it was almost 30,000 is the mark that we're reaching now as far as how many pedophiles and child sex traffickers have been taken off the streets since Trump has gotten into office. So it's only a matter of time until we see or hear about more of these people who can expose some of the deep state political ties with all of these nasty perverts out there who find it their way to make a profit by selling a child to some other pervert. So it seems as if the darkness is being exposed in every aspect, doesn't it, Ron?
Yes, ma'am. And I guess we'll have to get into some of the background of these pedophile investigations a little bit later. If you're just joining us, ladies and gentlemen, massive earthquake rocks Osaka, Japan, hundreds injured, many killed. And you're looking at some of the footage, pretty intense stuff. Everything's rocking back and forth. Pay attention to these light poles swaying hardcore. Now, of course, the buildings are all up to code over there for the most part, so we're not seeing the devastation like we saw in Mexico City not that long ago when a similar earthquake struck over there. But things were rumbling and rolling and tossing and turning, and it gave people quite a fright. And of course, there are nuclear reactors nearby, which basically, is a cause for concern, because during the Fukushima disaster, they really didn't tell people until it was way, way too late. And of course, if we look at the maps of nuclear reactors in Japan, we see that there are quite a few of them in the vicinity of Osaka, near Kyoto. And it's just another disaster waiting to happen. And it is just, amazing to think of how many nuclear reactors are right there along fault lines or other, dangerous, conditions. And, what we saw in Fukushima really was a wake-up call when you saw all of this radiation being dispersed into the Pacific, making its way around the world through the air currents, raining down on poor, unsuspecting civilians. I remember those first days back in 2011 when it was raining after the disaster. I mean, you were thinking to yourself, man, am I getting rained down by with some hot particles? And of course, that's always the concern in these types of nuclear disasters, are hot particles basically drifting through the air. And if you inhale one of those, they get lodged and stay with you forever, like a cell phone, you could say, always emitting radiation. But this is obviously much worse. Although people should be concerned about the death towers and the cell phones that are out there, ladies and gentlemen, because the radiation levels are off the charts. We covered this a couple years ago when, in fact, the EPA's RADNet network went down because of radiation levels being so high, and they took down the beta particle testing portion of their RADNet, or radiation network, because of the cell phone towers so high. And we did the math, and it was like every major city was just sitting below evacuation levels for radiation when it was like 4G. Now with these new 5G towers, it's going to be a catastrophe. It's going to be like a Fukushima in every neighborhood, to be quite honest with you. They plan on putting up another 300,000 towers, which is more than they put up in the last 30 years throughout the United States. And
Ron, that's not even including all of the little mini booster boxes that they are putting inside of all of the neighborhoods now too.
Well, and the Wi-Fi.
And those in itself, Right.
Yeah, and the Wi-Fi and all the hotspots, and I mean, and not to mention the radio waves, the television waves. I mean, it's never been it's never been an environment like it is today. And there's no long-term testing, and other countries have basically reduced like the maximums that people can be exposed to, except in the U.S. It's kind of like what they've done to our food. Our food is illegal in most other countries because it's deemed dangerous, and our radiation levels in our cities are also deemed dangerous, way above what it is in other countries. And this should be a cause for concern, as well as the vaccines, as well as, the brazen introduction of GMOs into the food supply without, proper consent from the consumer or the American public. Just like when they introduced fluoride back in the 1950s, no informed consent. People are basically being medicated without their consent through the municipal water supply, and that's just the stuff that we really know about. But there are some, there's other published studies talking about what's really in the water, what's really in the food, what's really in the air, and it's a concern. And it all gets basically, covered up through umbrella diseases like cancer or the like, and they just diagnose you and say, well, there's nothing you can do here. Become a customer of the pharmacia or the, pharmaceutical industry, and everything will be okay. And it's basically, they try to make you sick so that they can make money off of you at the back end. And if you don't survive, that's just more money, for them, because, you don't get your Social Security benefits. You don't, you got to pay taxes on what gets passed down to future generations and stuff. So it's a win-win for them. It's a win-win for the system, and it should change. People should be concerned about the radiation levels. They should be as concerned about Fukushima as they are about these death towers and what's in the food, what's in the water, what's in the air. And it's a catastrophe, especially in America. And other countries are waking up, but for some reason we're just way behind when it comes to safety. And it makes you wonder, and we're not the tree hugger type, but we don't like the way these death towers look, and neither do most people. That's why now they're kind of like trying to disguise them as trees, or build buildings around them so that you can't even see them, right? But everybody, when they look at them, they're like death towers, and then they look up a little higher, and it's chemtrails, and it's like, what is going on? What is going on in the world? And that's the question that people should be asking themselves. What's really going on out there, ladies and gentlemen? And of course, we dig deeper. We try to figure out, where is all this evil coming from? And the short of the long of it is that evil is coming from evildoers. But this type of organized evil is coming from an organized structure of evildoers. And I guess, the first hint that we'll give you is pay attention to these people in Hollywood. They're always giving you this, devil hand sign. They're always saying that they've sold their souls to the devil. They're basically like the main demographic of what's going on in California. And California is in charge of all of these, tech companies, a lot of the industry, and the like, and, heavy influence from Silicon Valley. And, and through this mechanism, the few are able to control the masses and poison the masses through their greed and their lies and their blatant, not caring about the human species. I think we got Yosef back on the line from the Holy Land. Tell us, Yosef, what do you think about this new world order and who's involved?
Well, thank you, Ron, again for having me. It's always a pleasure to join you here, fighting the fight to bring the truth to the people. I think that the New World Order is taking a lot of hits, a lot of blows right now, and we're seeing Putin and Israel and Trump doing their part to bring justice and good and straightforwardness into their countries. This catastrophe in Japan is a bad thing, and it's funny because I think that we're seeing a lot more action. We've just had our show yesterday about Hawaii, which is a natural disaster, and now we're seeing another natural disaster in Japan. I think that there's a pattern here. It could be that the powers that be are using the climate. The New World Order is kind of hinting to Trump, oh, you think you can pull out of the climate change accords or whatever, give us basically bribe.
Okay, I want to slow you down. I want to slow you down because obviously, these places that are getting hit whether it be Hawaii or Japan or California, they're pretty much non-Christian, right? And so it makes you wonder, is there some sort of significance there? Are these signs happening in pagan places? And it seems like, the further a country or a location drifts away from Christianity or Judaism, we're Judeo-Christian as Christians. None of us skip over the Old Testament, but it seems like the further people drift away from Scripture, the more it starts to look like hell on earth. And we're definitely seeing this in California. We see this in places like New York. We see this obviously in the main island of Hawaii, where they're still like worshiping the volcanoes and the like. And in Japan, I mean, they're lovely people, but let's just say that they're not of the Christian mindset. And so it makes you wonder,
or of the Jewish mindset either.
Yep. Judeo-Christian, ladies and gentlemen, we're in it together. and we have to be. I mean, our heritage is linked. But in any case, where we're seeing the worst of the worst is basically in places where it seems like the people have lost their ways. And this has been recorded back in time.
So you're saying, according to what you feel,
all the way back
you feel
to,
that it's God doing it.
All the way back to Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, it's hard to say what kind of mechanisms are in place to correct what's going on Earth. Is it automatic? Are there thresholds and then the system just kind of takes over? Or is it, beyond that? It's hard for us to say from the ants' perspective. But we see a lot of things that are kind of like on autopilot in this world. We see the weather kind of take care of itself. Weather is actually energy transfer from the equators to the poles. We see the human body, animal life repair itself after an injury. The program, takes care of itself, and we're seeing the program in the DNA. So it tends to take care of itself. There doesn't seem to be like a necessity for a lot of micromanagement. I mean, it can happen, obviously, but it's hard to say, what really triggers these events. Is it the Matrix? Is it beyond? These are the types of questions that we like to ask. Now, there's always, skeptics out there, and it's okay to be a skeptic. But, the more science does its research, the more it confirms that life was created. We see that in the DNA. It's a programming language. It's got its own code. It's one of the most advanced. It is the most advanced program known to man, and it contains thousands of sets of encyclopedias in every little cell. It's amazing, and it's literally information, ladies and gentlemen. And so the more we discover,
you think that so
I answered
far
that.
You say so. You're saying that you're seeing that the justice is being served.
Is it
properly?
Well, we can call it whatever we want to call it.
We can speculate.
Well, it's hard to say. What's going on. What happened in Sodom and Gomorrah? What happened in Sodom and Gomorrah?
I would like to speculate this here. Yeah. How about this? That maybe what it is the people who worship the creation more than the creator. This is the type of thing that you would see. But you also have to take into account that there are machines and capabilities that man has in order to make things like this happen as well. And we have examples of that, like in the UK just recently there was an earthquake, but before the earthquake there was crazy lightning. And we saw that during the earthquake last year down in Mexico.
let me just say this: earthquake lights happen during every earthquake, and it's a very interesting phenomena because as the pressure builds on the crust between these tectonic plates, as like certain crystals, this is the scientific explanation here. As these crystals are compressed, it lets off a discharge of electrons above the pressure points, and these are referred to as earthquake lights. But there are tectonic weapons. Weapons that cause earthquakes do exist, and of course we would see the earthquake lights regardless of the natural or synthetic origins of the earthquake. But I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility that these things are happening for one reason or another, and they're not just random circumstances. Especially when you look at Fukushima, it did an extraordinary amount of damage, and it looked dark-sided to its core. And so it's not unthinkable that they would have, they would have used their tectonic weapon in the Pacific, caused this huge tidal wave, and wanted this thing to happen. It was, it was just waiting to happen. And the reports of Fukushima that came out, basically talked about a cascade or a perfect storm of events that allowed this thing to run away into what it was, which was a catastrophe. 3 different reactors melting down, blowing up. You saw the mushroom clouds, you saw the remnants of the building. I mean, unprecedented contamination throughout the world. And so it is possible, tectonic weapon, it is possible that this is, the matrix of, in one form or another. But it's happened, and the question is, what's going on in these nuclear reactors right now? What's going to happen when the next big one hits? And would we be lucky enough to see California sink into the ocean? I'm sure that's what a lot of people are wondering in the heartland. That would be a nice little change. If you're just joining us, ladies and gentlemen, massive earthquake rocks Osaka, hundreds injured, many killed, and fears of a new Fukushima near the epicenter, as there are many nuclear reactors right around Osaka, Kyoto area. And so they'll only tell us in the worst case scenarios. They'll only tell us when they can't hide it anymore. But you can't really believe the television these days. And these nuclear reactors are a cause for concern. Even if it's not an earthquake out there, they're always outgassing nuclear materials. They have to do it every time they change the fuel, or when there's a buildup in the reactor, they just outgas, and they're just like, oh yeah, everything's fine. And there's also these aging pipes in the coolant systems that run underneath these reactors, and just about every reactor in America is basically leaking tritium. They're finding tritium in the water among everything else, especially in areas like New York City. There's like tritium in the drinking water coming out of 3 Mile Island or something like that, and everybody's got an issue with their plant next door. And that's basically one of the things that people should be concerned about, having one of these disasters in your area, or potential disasters. And there's another real interesting story about the Hanford nuclear site. When they first started operating out of that, they were feeding the water directly from the reactor right into the Columbia River, which is headed right into Portland. And you wonder why people in Portland are so crazy. That might have something to do with it, ladies and gentlemen. That might have something to do with it. Now I want to let Danny Ray and Joseph continue on with their ideas of tectonic weapons striking near this area, and perhaps being to blame. Who wants to hit first? Danny Ray?
Yeah, I'll do it. I mean, the idea is that we know that they have this technology, and they could be using the weather weapons, that's what they're used as, weapons, as an assistance to certain aspects of the world, like Africa never gets enough rain, and instead of allowing there to be a drought, they could use their technology to be able to see the clouds and have it rain. But instead they put too much water in the atmosphere in certain places, and then you have flash floods the way that you do, like up in Annapolis just the other week. They had another crazy flood, and like 2 years ago when I lived up there, it did the same thing, but this time it was worse. Like it destroyed so much stuff all over again that they had practically just repaired. We know that they've been able to steer storms, and we've watched them do it. As a matter of fact, anybody who watches what the weather is doing, there's lots of people out there who pay attention to it out on YouTube, and you can see where they're spraying all of the different water vapors up in the air. They have lots of hydro plants that will just dump thousands and thousands of gallons of water into the atmosphere, and they do it in a timely fashion so that as the storm's moving, it's growing and continues to grow. And I know I'm not the only one who's ever witnessed these types of things, but they are able to turn on these plants whenever they want and create a storm out of nothing. And we've seen the way that these storms are forming now. It's just it's absolutely catastrophic for a lot of places.
Absolutely. And, weather modification has been something that people have been talking about ever since they started seeing the chemtrails for themselves, as well as what's happening on these weather maps. I mean, you can see some very strange formations when it comes to storms, as well as other phenoms. And, of course, this could be used by other countries and manipulated. The weather could be manipulated in our country just as we could be manipulating weather in other people's countries. And this brings like a whole new dimension to Cold War. Before Cold War, they would just kind of like set up like proxy armies and attempt regime change in various countries, and that was the extent of it. But now with modern technology, Cold War could mean all sorts of things, including weather manipulation, the release of unknown diseases, disease X or something like that. And that's all the more reason to try and keep a civilized relationship with other countries, despite what the mainstream media is trying to sell you. We certainly think that peace is better than war, but the television is always trying to sell you war. They're always trying to sell you a boogeyman because they don't want you focusing on the criminals from within. That's one of the oldest strategies in the book, and we saw that quite clearly with the Snowden files. We're seeing that with Julian Assange. They'll want to focus on the whistleblower instead of the evidence, and the evidence just basically gets ignored because the mainstream media manipulates people into thinking, well, you shouldn't have heard about that. That you weren't supposed to see that. You're supposed, and now we're supposed to blame the whistleblower. It's just part of their deception campaign, and I think people are tired of it. To be quite honest, they're tired of the CNN, they're tired of the NBC, the Rachel Madcows and the like, and they just want to see good people doing the right thing for the right reason. And that can happen, ladies and gentlemen, if we just start deporting these liberals into California, build a wall around it, and just go from there. I mean, that's what we need. Our country is basically turning into a nightmare, and it has a lot to do with the social engineering, what they're putting in the movies and the music and the TV shows and even the news, the way they're covering the news, the way they cover the issues. They call killing a child a choice, and it goes further. You got now members or you got candidates running for Congress that are saying, oh, raping a child is freedom, incest is freedom, we don't want to tell families what to do with their children, and that children don't have the same rights as adults. That's why it's really important to focus on these people and call them out for what they are. They're the people where good is evil and evil is good. And anybody that can basically spin killing a child into a choice and basically ignore all of the other evidence, I think is really disturbing. Just like when they say like men can be women and women can be men, that's really disturbing. The idea of two men plowing each other is really disturbing. Even two men kissing each other, I mean, it just gives me the willies. I don't know, there's something wrong with that. But everybody's got their opinion on that matter. But if it looks kind of disturbing, it probably is disturbing. And everything these people push is basically, New World Order, anti-Christian. And it's very troublesome. It's very troublesome, and I'm not surprised that these places kind of get hit with natural disasters, because that's basically what the Bible tells us happens in places that where morality is run amok. And I think that's one of the reasons why we should be talking about this as a country, is because we don't want these disasters expanding here. It's already a disaster in California. You've got hundreds of thousands of zombies roaming around, like hooked on drugs and all the like. And their state is starting to burn basically all year round, and it's choking out the rest of us, with their smoke. And it's a disaster in California, and it's trying to spread like a disease through the airwaves, through the socialist media platforms and the internet and videos and music and the like. And everybody's entitled to free speech, but when you see them actually censor your speech to benefit their speech, you know that there's something super wrong. How many of you have been put in jail or prison in cyberspace or whatever platform because you start talking about chemtrails, or you start talking about Hillary for prison, or you start talking about the vaccines or 9/11? How many of you have faced the censorship yourself? That's how you know it's real. They don't even want to talk about it on CNN. They don't even want to talk about it on NBC. You know, the day they come clean about 9/11 is the day where they have some sort of credibility. But they have no credibility. All they have is lies. Tell me lies, like that 80s song. Ladies and gentlemen, tell me lies. That's all you get from the tell lie vision. And people, you know, wonder, why aren't things like 9/11 or chemtrails or, you know, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq or Obama's ISIS covered in the mainstream news? Because the revolution won't be televised, ladies and gentlemen. That's not part of the programming. The programming is to keep you in the dark. The programming is to keep you busy with, like, you know, Gladio B events or sports or something like that, so that you're not asking questions, or they have you focus on the boogeyman. You know, they try to like, you know, drum up, you know, like old feelings of Cold War back in the 1950s. They would prefer you having thinking about that kind of stuff than what's really going on in our country, what's really going on, you know, with our children and the like. And I think this is where the topic of discussion should be at. I think we need to control the narrative. I think we need to focus on what's really wrong in our country and understand the why. You know, there's a lot. It's really easy to say, well, look at these people in Pedowood. They're obviously cult members and Luciferians. That's obvious. But what we really want to focus on is the why. Why is this happening to these children, to these people in California? And it all stems back to child abuse. Right? People that get abused as children just end up losing their way as adults. And the vast majority of people that we find in prisons today were in fact abused as children, one form or another. And it's the same thing that we're seeing with the sex trafficking of children. You know, basically the whole pedophilia circle begins when children are abused, and then they grow up thinking that it's okay. Kind of like domestic abuse, it cycles. And now they've been able to hide it in the LGBTP community. But if you pay attention to, like, you know, the headlines like Kevin Spacey or Milo Yiannopoulos, I mean, they're going after 14-year-olds or younger, right? And this is basically how the cycle replicates. You know, they don't actually have children themselves. They abuse children, and then these children become abusers, at least a certain percentage of them. And not only, you know, are they sexual abusers, but they end up being criminals or junkies, and it spirals out of control. And that's really at the core of, you know, the degradation of our society, is the abuse of children. And now they try to prep them in schools by sending gender dysphoric people into the preschools, into, you know, the elementary schools, and then they try to sexualize them, prepare them for being, you know, part of that community. And that just opens the door for drug abuse and crime and, you know, obviously a failed, you know, family life. And that's a big concern in our country. Now they're saying that at least, 30% of women out there are raising their children all by themselves. And that's tripled in the last, like, 10 years. And if it triples again, it's going to be devastating, because that too is a problem when it comes to criminal behavior and degenerate behavior, antisocial behavior, is the lack of a male, like, you know, role model in the lives of the children. And, you know,
well, the destruction of the family is like their number one goal. Ultimately, they don't. If we have a weak platform, you know, if you're raised in a way where you don't understand, like, the godly structure, I guess that's ultimately what the family unit's supposed to be. Like, the father in the family is the leader and the protector, and the mother is the caregiver, and the children, you know, they all fall under that umbrella. But the way that our society has made it, it's like the government is over top of everybody, and then it doesn't matter if dad's around, because mom's taken care of by the government, and the kids are taken care of by the schools and raised by the schools. And you know, then you end up having so many people who are, like you say all the time, Ron, they're born with just this militant atheism, because they've been indoctrinated with theories, you know, with the theory of evolution, and, you know, they all think that it's fact because, you know, they read it in a textbook. It was taught to them their whole lives, from kindergarten until, you know, after they've
Well, let's talk about this theory of evolution. I'm sure most people out there have heard about it, and basically everybody accepts it because of the way it's administered to you as a child in the schools. And they talk about it, and it kind of makes sense in the way that, well, one thing could evolve into another and into another and into another. But we've never actually seen that firsthand in nature. It literally is a theory. And the problem with evolution of species, as Darwin put it way back in the 1800s, was that if somebody were to evolve into something else, who would you marry? If a dog were to evolve into some kind of flying animal, who would it marry to carry on the process? We've never seen it. There's a chicken and the egg problem. Not only that, but the law of biogenesis tells us that life can only come from life. It can't come from non-living material. So they don't even have a way for this to start. They kind of want to call it a chemical evolution, but they can't do it in a laboratory. They can't turn primordial soup into the simplest form of life, because the simplest form of life requires a programming language to govern itself. Basically what we're seeing even in the simplest form of life is micro machines being ruled by DNA, and the program in the DNA, which is the most complex program that humans have ever seen, basically makes this molecular world happen. And you got little molecular machines, transporting things from one side of the cell to another, and you've got code that regulates the levels of this chemical or that chemical, sugars or ions and the like. What we're discovering is that in order for life to be here, it had to be designed. And this is now forcing scientists to reconsider, the origins of life. But people of faith have known about this for thousands of years. Science is just now starting, to be able to describe what we're actually, what we've known for as long as any of us have been here. So, that's something that I think is important to understand. Not only are there lies in the television, there are lies in the textbook, and it's basically to keep you in the dark. It's kind of like the Santa Claus. The Santa Claus tries to replace what the season is really about. But Santa is an anagram for Satan, and it's all about like the psychological, the psyop of trying to get you to believe into something and then taking that away from you. And it's a dubious plan. But ladies and gentlemen, have no doubt that we're not here by chance. There's more to life than just four walls and a television screen, and that's the spiritual side of the human experience. And billions of people are walking that path, and they're not going back. Even these people in California or Washington D.C., New York, that have told you that they've sold their souls to the devil. They always give you this Diablo hand sign and the like. They're telling you they're living that spiritual life as well. But their religion involves killing children, it involves murder, it involves, destruction, skull and bones versus skull and bones. It's a cult of death, and they want everybody to drink the Kool-Aid. They want everybody to suffer because misery loves company, and that's really what we need to focus on as a country, because we're basically one of the last strongholds for Christianity in the modern world. And nobody's going to save us from ourselves, and we've got a threat from within. In the 90s, the Democrats didn't look like the way they look today. They've been hijacked. They've been turned into a radicalized terrorist group that goes around beating up people, threatening people, and there's just there's no substance to their arguments. It's just profanity. It's just hatred, and it's like that all throughout their their platform. They claim to be humanitarian, they claim to be pro-family, but look at California. Look at how many people are living on the streets. California is actually running a surplus right now. What don't you think they could be helping the hundreds of thousands of people that are walking aimlessly, addicted to drugs on the streets, left behind? No, they're not humanitarian. They're socialists, which is basically like one step away from communist. And it's always the socialist leaders that are living the high life while the people are living the low life. So it's just remarkable that people actually subscribe to this, way of thinking, like rooting for a sports team. I love it when people celebrate after, the World Cup or celebrate after the Super Bowl. They think they're part of that team. You didn't get the bonus. You didn't get the paycheck, you didn't get the supercar, you didn't get the supermodel, you didn't get any of it. You're not on that team, ladies and gentlemen. And, you know, when you think about what these people have sold out to, they've sold their souls to the devil. They want to take everybody with them. And anybody that would support that in the face of all their lies is either completely stupid or complacent or colluding with the dark side. And I think we've got many more cult members in this country than we care to admit. And it's not by chance either, because they've been at it, this social engineering for quite some time. They've been social engineering the minds of young people for decades in this country, since the 60s. And in fact, you know, if we were to actually accurately describe the demographics out there, I'd bet, you know, we're probably outnumbered 3-1 in terms of, you know, Luciferians or cult members. Now, some people might think that that number is a bit large. You know, all we can say for sure is if you look at the results of the 2016 election, 85% of young people voted for Hillary, which is a red flag, a cause for alarm. And you actually had more people voting for the dark side than you did for the right side. And that should be a cause for concern. But whatever the numbers may be, whether it be 1-1 or 3-1, the direction that this, you know, that the wind is blowing right now is not in our favor. And, you know, these evildoers have control of the schools, they have control of the media, the entertainment, and so they're free to pollute the minds of young people at will. And there isn't a whole lot of pushback on this issue. That's why everybody really needs to get involved, get part of the blockchain, think of new ways, new ideas to get the message out there. You know, start your own news channel, start your local newspaper, start a group in your town, wake people up. You know, Truthers Anonymous. You know, hey, you know, I'm Ron Johnson. I'm a truther. You know, and just go out there and keep waking people up and help people through denial. You know, you're going to meet a lot of people, you know, that go through denial, just like you did when you first heard about 9/11 or something like that, and you wanted to fight back and you wanted to give your best, you know, presentation to defend the system, to defend the matrix, but you basically only ended up, you know, persuading yourself the opposite. Because the more you looked into it, the more you did your research, the more you understand, you know, what's actually going on out there. But, you know, the real point of you know, these broadcasts on Stranger Than Fiction News is to help you realize that you're not just waking up to tyranny. You're waking up to the epic struggle of good versus evil. It's not about politics on television. It's about religion. And one side is pushing Christianity and the other side is pushing anti-Christianity. That's what it's all about. And when you think about that in that sort of context, it's quite clear what we're up against. You look at the 10 Commandments, you know, don't cheat, don't lie, don't steal, don't kill. And that's exactly what these Skull and Bones versus Skull and Bones cult members are pushing. Non-stop, endless wars, murdering children. They basically set up society so people become violent and psychotic and you know, and the like. And so, you know, it just sets the scene for mass murders, psychosis, a society of pure evil. And that's what they push. And at every opportunity that they have, they basically, you know, push the agenda of the dark side. And this is why people should be paying attention to what's going on, you know, in politics these days, is because you can see all the different manifestations of the dark side basically gang up against this president, and they're doing everything they can to stop this president. But this president is pushing against the Luciferian mainstream media. He's pushing against, you know, the child sex trafficking. Yeah, he's pushing against the New World Order and the like. And you know, nobody's perfect out there, but I think a lot of us should be supporting this president, and we should be pushing for major reforms in our country. You know, and you know, we can start with term limits. We can start by, you know, redoing the education system, taking the lies out of the textbook, taking evolution, the Big Bang out of the textbook. It flies in the face of the laws of thermodynamics. You know, you can't get something from nothing. You can't start with nothing, have a mysterious Big Bang, and then all of a sudden have something. That's not even a theory. That's a joke. And so, you know, to have them push that on kids, on top of, you know, them sexualizing the kids, this is where the evil begins. This is why our society is degrading and has been since the 1960s. I think we've got Yosef back. I'm going to let Yosef take over for 5 minutes and mix it up with Danny Ray. So, wherever you guys want to go, if you guys want to cover some news stories or talk about this massive, earthquake in Osaka that has injured hundreds of people and killed many more out there, and causing fears of a new Fukushima. Take it wherever you want to take it, Yosef.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you for having me again. And I want to look at it again at the same situation, but from a different angle. Ron always brings up the Hitler and the occult, and we know that there were Nazis, or whatever you want to call them, people of Hitler's group, out there in Japan, learning about the way the warrior children are brought up in the Japanese culture at the time, before World War II. The swastika was basically adopted from them. Some people say that it was adopted earlier or whatnot. But the thing is that there's negatives and positives to every culture, and I think that it's important to look at Japan. And as I said, my uncle is the chief rabbi of Japan, Rabbi Binyamin Edery, and you could look up his site, 7for770.com. He has a site in Japanese, and he has a site in English, speaking about the 7 laws of Noah and so on. In any case, we're looking at the positives and the negatives. And the negatives, I think that with the Japanese, and from my interactions with Japanese people that came to visit New York with my uncle, so I know that they said that the Japanese, when they joined Hitler's coalition in World War II, they kind of saw a very successful leader, like it looked like, we would look at America today, and said, okay, we should probably collaborate with this person if we want to continue existing peacefully in the world. It wasn't like they had an entrenched anti-Semitism, or they weren't like the SS that had an agenda, an occultish agenda to do ethnic cleansing or whatnot. Anyway, going back to the point, and the Japanese have this honor, and they have this no feelings attitude, this cold-blooded attitude. And the positives of that is that they're very civilized, they're very respectful, and they're very efficient, and there's no crime in Japan. But the negatives of that is that same no feelings can bring a person to cold-blooded murder, and like what we saw, that Hitler took what he needed from the Japanese in order to create his terror on the world. And till this day, 2018, as my uncle has explained to me, there is no charity in Japan. Charity is a new concept, and it's something that has to be introduced into Japanese culture. And that's his main stress, of course. The leader of the generation, the Jewish leader, Rabbi Schneerson, believed to be the Jewish King Messiah. He spoke about charity and goodness and kindness in the world, and that's what my uncle stresses over there. So even though they're not, most of his work, there's not so many Jews in Japan, but most of his work is with non-Jews, but he'll speak about those kind of things. So again, breaking this down into the situation that we have in front of us, I think that what we need is a lot more goodness and kindness, a lot more caring and sharing and loving, and people that are in Japan should support those who are the victims of this crisis, and people who are not, as Ron said, we should pray for them and see what we can do. Of course, again, here on SDFN, we warn our audience not to donate to shady organizations or that remind us of Hillary Clinton's Foundation for Haiti, when the money never makes it to the needy. So, it's very important that when you want to help, that you actually help and you don't just waste your time. In order to help, you need to have a merit. Just in order to help, we need to have a merit. So that's a couple of things that we should have in mind. So, of course, Ron was saying earlier that we're recently seeing natural disasters in Hawaii or in California or in Japan right now, which come together with a situation that mirrors the behavior of the locals when it comes to their service of God. So like we said, that the people in Hawaii, they serve the volcano, which is of course idolatry and is against the Bible, against the will of God. And then we see in California, they are into occultism and what Hollywood is into, Satanism and Luciferianism. So, and then in Japan, maybe they still haven't, connected to God, and hopefully, there'll be some missionary work, and people will go there and be a positive impact on the place, bring some godliness. As my uncle has been doing for over 10 years with his family, and it's interesting the names that are coming up of the places that have been hit, and those are places that my uncle actually has been opening up new synagogues and new centers of learning there. So it's interesting to see.
Well, I just want to cut in there. I mean, that's awesome. What has anybody ever gone to Japan on Google Maps and seen like swastikas everywhere? And I think you brought up a really interesting point, and people should kind of check out the documentaries about Hitler and the occult on the History Channel, and then see the parallels in the WikiLeaks to the socialists and the occult in America. Remember that the Nazi Party was called the Workers' Socialist Party. That's what Nazi means in German. And everybody should be really suspicious, because I don't think a whole lot has changed in the elite circles. And right now, Germany has basically been able to take over Europe with this, with this new euro money out of their, central bank in Frankfurt. And they've taken over, and they've been able to do, through this banking system, what they weren't able to do in 2 world wars, which is basically take over the continent. And I think people are waking up to that, especially with their policy of like open borders, just let anybody in. You let the third world in, and then all of a sudden we start looking like the third world. Don't be surprised. That only makes sense. And so this is a real interesting kind of like segue. People should check out, what's happening in these occult circles, how they're influencing politics. Everybody's seen the Skull and Bones versus the Skull and Bones on Meet the Press. Whatever happened to Tim Russer? These are legitimate questions, as well as, Tom Clancy, Michael Hastings, Breitbart. Breitbart was trying to warn people about this occult pedophilia and the Podestas and the like, and they snuffed him out. Check out Seth Rich. They snuffed him out. He was the DNC leaker. And, of course, there's going to be a hearing at the Judiciary Committee on the IG report that's going to be talking about the Hillary investigation, all the cover-ups there. However we can get this crooked Hillary into prison is fine by most of us. Hillary for prison, ladies and gentlemen, and Obama for prison too. Obama is ISIS, and undoubtedly he was at the top of this spy ring, for the benefit of Hillary, using the tools of the deep state against our president, and still today, with their witch hunt, Mueller and all that. Mueller, remember, was in charge of the FBI during 9/11, and they haven't come clean about 9/11. They're certainly not going to come clean about Hillary, and don't expect anything better in this witch hunt. It's all politics, if you will, and they're going to be talking about the bias of the FBI and Comey and McCabe in these hearings. We're going to try and cover that live here. It starts at 2 p.m. Eastern. I'm sure they're going to have opening statements, so we'll start covering it when it gets into the question and answer session, and just kind of talk about the BS that they're going to try and roll out there. Oh, there's no bias, but in fact it was in your face bias with all of these messages from the lead investigators in the Hillary and Trump investigation. The same people that were basically like, we're going to take Trump down, we're going to stop him, and all this stuff, like fanatics, like zealots, and it's really it's mind-boggling. And this is historic. This is a historic time that we're witnessing in America. I mean, you had the FBI director, deputy director fired for criminal conduct, covering up. Hillary obviously guilty as hell, and everybody wants to see her ass in prison. So I mean, these are historic times. And of course, if you're just joining us, we're covering this massive earthquake in Osaka, hundreds injured, many killed, with fears of a new Fukushima near the epicenter. Of course, we've got a ton of nuclear reactors right near the Osaka-Kyoto area. And what we learned in the Fukushima disaster is they're only going to tell us what's going on after it's too late. And you can't really expect them to be honest in the mainstream media. And that saga continues today. But, this is kind of like what's happening right now. And, of course, everybody remembers Fukushima, right? This major disaster that spewed radioactive material all over the world, in fallout, through the rain and through hot particles just floating in the wind. And of course, what they did to the Pacific and what they're still doing to the Pacific, it's still an ongoing disaster. But it's something that isn't talked about enough. How these people are basically polluting the environment everywhere they can, not only through like these nuclear wastelands like Fukushima and Chernobyl, but just think about all these frack sites that are radioactive as well. all sorts of radioactive waste coming from these frack sites. And, there's frack sites in residential neighborhoods, there's frack sites on school property. It's everywhere. And not only, is it contaminating the water and the air with radiation and toxic chemicals, but also the outgassing coming from these wells is also changing the air that we breathe. And it's becoming, slightly more toxic every year. We can see this escalation of toxic chemicals drifting in the wind on top of this hell on earth California situation where it just burns half the year and smokes out the continent. That's set to start up again here pretty soon. A lot of things to cover, a lot of things to talk about. We haven't heard from Danny Ray in quite some time. Feel bad about that. Danny Ray, please tell us what else is going on in the news right now.
Well, we just see more and more of the darkness that's being exposed, especially my focus has really been on these child traffickers because it's something that plagues the whole world, but especially here in America where a majority of the child pornography that is manufactured is actually manufactured here. And, the past couple of weeks, especially since they found that camp out in Arizona, everybody's been I personally have been trying to keep track of all of the local busts because they're not really headline news necessarily. You don't see it broadcast on the mainstream media because this is really an epidemic, and the more people who know about it, I think, like I was saying before, the more that we expose it, the more these political ties to the deep state end up coming out. And I understand that the word says that there is no good thing that dwells within our flesh, but each of us has the opportunity to do something in this case that really matters. First and foremost, parents need to arm their children and make sure that they understand the threats that are out there, especially in this cyber world, because it's as if everybody is in cyberspace all the time anymore. And our children have never seen a day without a computer. This generation right here is very much targeted by these people, and you can see it in specific games that they play and so on and so forth. So the best we can do is like we do here. We continue to cover what's breaking, what's going on, but also keep in the forefront of people's minds the things that really matter, 49 more arrests just a couple of days ago over in Colorado, getting more of these scumbags off the streets and making sure that our kids are kept safe. And I just can't wait until they actually do come out with this whole IG report and stop with the biased redactions and hiding stuff in footnotes. The people really deserve to know and understand what has happened so that we can unite together against these evildoers. That's the only problem that we really have, is the fact that these evildoers still own a majority of all of our entertainment, our media, and many of the different corporations that are out there are also in cahoots with all of these people to keep everyone in this divide and distract, divide and conquer sort of mentality. Nobody wants to step up and be together, but that's why they're trying to hide these things as far as what's going on with the children and then busting all these child traffickers, because that's one thing that everybody can break all of their borders as far as anything is concerned, being right or left or Democrat or Republican. None of that should matter as far as what is implicated here as far as taking care of our children, making sure that the kids are kept safe from these sickos who have been doing this for a very long time. They're not just the people down the street. They're not just your average Joe who works at Disney World, like we saw a couple weeks ago down in Florida, but it's people who are actually in the White House making rules, making laws, and passing regulations and getting money put in their pocket by people to make sure that they're taking our rights away at the same time. And honestly, it's channels like ours where you hear the real news. You don't get the liberal twist on everything, and it joins the spiritual with what's actually happening in our physical world. And there's so many people out there with eyes to see and ears to hear, and that's why you have so many people out there who are shining this light and making a bigger difference. You see it everywhere. So many people are making their own content, sharing this content even, and making sure that they wake up their friends and their family to what is actually going on, because this isn't just a political issue. We know that it really boils down to the good versus evil aspect of life. And the more people who share these things, the more people who send in show tips even, like, we're keeping our community awake and out of the sleepy slumber that everybody else is under, because they watch that television programming, because so many people are definitely programmed by this system. And you know, the more you see it, the easier it is to break out of it. So if you're a new listener out there and you really despise the content that comes out of here, you might want to just, you know, slow down a little bit and
go back to
and do your own
NBC.
research
Go
on some
back
of
to
the matters.
NBC.
You know, a lot of them actually have said that they're going back to NBC.
Good.
So
Good riddance.
bye-bye, have fun.
Yeah, go back to Rachel Madcow.
You're not going to get the truth. All you're going to hear is their lies, and if that's what you want, then you continue to tune into their lies, because you're just going to stay in this sleepy slumber. But remember, when everything does hit the fan, you'll remember these things that you heard, and it's
Cult
not going to be
members don't
based.
care. Haters don't care about the truth. They just want to see the lies. Tell me lies, like the song says. That's why they tune into CNN. That's why they tune into NBC. That's all they can handle. And there are millions of cult members in our, you know, in our country. And don't be surprised if some of them actually, you know, show up here. You know, haters are everywhere these days, and you know, that's just the way it goes. We don't mind watching the haters lose their minds, listening to the truth, trying to tell you how you should go back to NBC and listen to the lies of WMDs in Iraq, the lies of 9/11, the lies about the chemtrails, the GMOs, the vaccines, the fluoride, the Gladio B events. Go back to the lies. Go back to sleep. This is, you know, this is basically a course in advanced thinking when it comes to what's really going on out here, and it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody. It's okay to be a skeptic, but it's not okay to be a skeptic and not do your own research. If you look at what's really going on, undoubtedly there's something terribly wrong with the way things are in our country. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure it out. Just go check out Nick at Night. Go check out Leave It to Beaver, The Happy Days, The Brady Bunch, and look at where our country is today. Look at the mentality of people. Look at the way, you know, things are out there. It's like Sodom and Gomorrah, New Babylon. And, you know, these evildoers will stop at nothing to protect, you know, their lies and their deception and their evil way of doing things. Never forget that evil is as evil does. You want to know why all these evil things are happening in our country? It's because of evil, not just any kind of evil. We're talking about organized evil, ladies and gentlemen. Just check out these people in Hollywood, these celebrities that you see on television. They're all giving you this, you know, these Luciferian hand signs, telling you that they've sold their souls to the devil. They're telling you what they're up to. And the worst of it is what they're doing to the children. Check out documentaries like An Open Secret. Check out the Franklin Files. Check out FBI files on groups like the Finders and many other pedophile groups that basically span coast to coast, from Hollywood to Washington, D.C., trafficking children, protecting that abuse. Go check out Creepy Biden. Go check out Dennis Hassard. Go check out Anthony Weiner. Go check out Epstein and the Lolita Express. Go check out how many pedophiles and sex offenders are sitting there right around the Hillary camp. That's not a coincidence. That's a sign. That's telling you something. And it's a profile, too. And every investigator should be able to, you know, see this clearly if they're objective, if they're not biased. But that's the problem with a lot of people out there. They're biased. They think they're part of some team, like Republican or Democrat. It's kind of like when people celebrate the Super Bowl or the World Cup. They think they're part of that team. We got breaking news for you. You didn't get the bonus. You didn't get the paycheck. You didn't get the supercar. You didn't get the supermodel. You're not part of that team, ladies and gentlemen. You're just part of the scam, and you've been conned. And the television is basically a tool for the few to control the many. And there's a reason why they call it programming, and there's a reason why you're not seeing the information that you should be seeing on television. Is because the revolution will not be televised. And you can't expect these liars and cheaters on CNN and NBC to tell you anything remotely close to the truth. All you can depend on them is the lies. And if you prefer the lies, if you prefer the fantasy, you prefer the blue pill, go to NBC. Go check out Rachel Madcow. Go back to daytime television with Ellen and all that shit. You know, there's no room for sheeple here. Here we're trying to get, you know, people awake, on the same page, focusing on the problems that matter most so that we can do the most damage. We need to focus our energy, our attention on the weak spots of the dark side, and that definitely ends up being, you know, 9/11, the eugenics programs, and what they're doing to the children. And if you look at what was in the WikiLeaks, you look at what was in the Podesta files, it's undoubted that we're dealing with cult members that traffic and abuse children. And, you know, investigators and psychologists will tell you of the firm links between Luciferian ideologies and ritualistic child sex abuse. And, you know, what's going on here is not your imagination. And, you know, you'll get trolls that'll come on, oh, come back to the, you know, come back to the Matrix, come back to NBC. You know, don't listen to those voices, ladies and gentlemen. Do your own research and come to your own conclusions. But, you know, once you start connecting the dots, once you start seeing, you know, the method to the madness, you really start getting concerned, especially when you see the end game. You know, these Luciferians in Silicon Valley, San Francisco, they're trying to roll out Skynet, Terminators. You know, they're trying to make this world into a prison planet. They don't plan on giving you a chance. They don't plan on giving you an opportunity to fight back. They want to assimilate you, and they'll keep you busy all the way until the end, all the way until they start marching you into those gas chambers, into those FEMA camps. They don't want you seeing it coming, because then you might resist, then you might fight back. And you know, it's too late to fight back, to protest when they're rolling you into the FEMA camps, ladies and gentlemen. By then it's too late. So basically people have to, you know, right now people have to wake up to what's coming. They have to start raising awareness on these issues, be part of the blockchain, get your country back, because things are much worse than you can possibly imagine. Ever hear that slogan, the answer to 1984 is 1776? Well, that's not just our birth date, ladies and gentlemen. That's the birth date of the Illuminati. That pyramid on the back of the dollar bill, that has nothing to do with us. We're not Egyptian. That's the logo, literally, for the Illuminati. We've got their logo, we've got their birth date. Nothing is as it seems. You've got, you know, inverted pentagrams, you know, built into the streets of Washington, D.C. You've got the Washington Monument that's 666 feet high from base to peak. And you've got, you know, a Luciferian temple 33 blocks away from the White House. This whole country is set up on a whole different set of values than you might think. And we're just sitting here like slaves, sitting here like cattle, waiting for the slaughterhouse. Moo, cow. What's it going to take for you to wake up and smell the tyranny? Do they have to put it on CNN? Is that what it's going to take for CNN to admit that they're involved? You know, it's not going to happen. The revolution is not going to be televised. It's up to you to do your own research, to connect the dots, to figure out what's going on, and understand that we're all in this together. We're all in this whether we like it or not. And there's bigger fish to fry than you know, who's the whatever right now. You know, whatever term you want to throw out there, whatever term snowflakes pretend to throw out there like they're offended. We got bigger fish to fry than political correctness. What we need to deal with here is the human trafficking, the Luciferians that are basically trying to destroy the planet and doom mankind. I mean, I want you to check out the transhuman agenda, not transsexual, where they're sending the gender dysphoric into elementary schools and preschools to sexualize your children. We're talking about transhuman, where they actually want to merge man with machine, assimilate like the Borg, plug you into the Matrix and turn you into an avatar for the Skynet, turn you into a ghost in the shell that just daywalks, sleepwalks from place to place, taking orders from the machines. And that's going to happen, and they're going to get there through automation. They're going to take all the jobs away, and then tell you, if you want to compete for the jobs of tomorrow, you got to get the super brain. You got to get that brain implant that lets you plug into the Matrix. How many people out there have gone on vacation and felt like they were out of touch? Felt that they didn't know what was going on in the world? Well, there's a new product out there for you. It's called the super brain. Never again will you be out of touch with what's going on in the world. You'll always be connected to the hive mind. That's coming, and once it does, humanity will be destroyed. and they can call it Humanity 2.0, they can call it post-human, they can call it whatever they want to, but it's part of their diabolical plans to destroy humanity as we know it. And people need to wake up to what's coming. It might seem, way out there for the, casual idiot, but for those of you with an IQ, higher than 20, this should be pretty obvious, and all we can do is just to continue waking people up, planting seeds, plant seeds about GMOs or vaccines or 9/11. Don't overdo it. Just plant the seed and let it grow. And over time, you'll see the difference. And we're already making a difference as a community, as a country. And we have to. We're the last stand for Christianity. We're the last stand for humanity. Nobody's going to save us from ourselves physically. We have to do it. We have to take charge. Yosef, what else can we say about this ongoing disaster in Japan and worldwide?
Thank you, Ron. To quote Hillary Clinton, she says, for her purposes, never let a disaster go to waste. And we're very similar, but in a very different way. We're the exact polarized opposite of what Hillary Clinton would have meant. And what she meant, first of all, is that you can always cash in on a disaster like she did with Haiti, and she did it very successfully by claiming to raise funds for the poor and needy over there, but she ended up just continuing to commit crimes and catastrophes against humanity and society as part of the New World Order agenda and so on and so forth. When we say that we never let a catastrophe go to waste, what we mean is, what the Judeo-Christians would mean is that we will remind the people that there is good in the world, and we will remind people that we need to do acts of goodness and kindness, and especially we have special opportunities once in a while to do those good acts of goodness and kindness when disaster strikes. Actually, the Rebbe says many times that there's going to come a time when you're not going to be able to give charity. You're not going to be able to help because the world's going to be in the Messianic era. It's going to be in the ultimate and complete redemption. Messiah is going to be revealed, and you won't be able to help others even if you wanted to. So look to see how you can help other people. The commandment of helping others is one of the biggest commandments that's compared to all the other commandments in the Bible. It's Shkula Keneged Kol HaMitzvos. The value of giving charity or helping others outweighs or weighs as much as all the other 613 commandments put together. So just have that in mind when you're debating if to help or to give a helping hand to others. And so yes, we're going to take advantage of this disaster, and we're going to take advantage by helping others and bringing us closer to each other and making this a place like we saw in Texas. Actually, we saw hundreds of thousands of Americans flock to the scene to see what they can do to help, and it became there was so much help being given to the people in Texas that the police and the government were getting mad. They had an issue with the help, and they were screaming at the truckers, and they were screaming at the people, "Get away from here! We don't want your help." Now, there's a lot of ways to look at that. We know that the government is interesting. I'm going to leave it at that. But the point is that there are times and opportunities when we can help. And right now, hopefully, those, I know I have many Jewish friends, American-speaking friends. There are many people that, are close to your family, or maybe that you don't know of, friends of friends of friends of family that are in Japan. The world is very small. It's a global village these days. So let's send our thoughts and prayers and try to be as helpful as possible. Of course, awareness by sharing this video, giving the people awareness of what's happening, notify their friends and relatives, and reach out to them and help out as much as possible is the best thing that we can offer you guys today. Thank you, Ron.
Absolutely, and we try and cover these events and use it as a platform to talk about the bigger issues, the struggle of good versus evil, of what's really happening in the world. And however we can get that message out there is basically the way that we work. But everybody should find ways to be superheroes in their communities, ways to kind of wake people up, run for office, run for city commission, run for city auditor, run for school board of education, run for something, get the issues out there, talk about it, reach out to people in your community, get organized, start a page, mirror content, do your own show. Even if you only reach 100 people a day, Imagine the time it would take you to reach 100 people going door to door. And you got to use the enemy's platforms against them, reach as many people as we can, and it makes a difference. And it'll continue to make a difference as long as we can continue to reach people out there. And that's why we're looking at the censorship. We still haven't gotten our YouTube channel back. They think we're haters over there. Are we haters for talking about the struggle of good versus evil? Well, you should take a look at YouTube and look at Google. Google sends all of its money to P.O. Box 666, Bermuda, literally. It's a Luciferian enterprise. They've got the 666 embedded in their Google Chrome logo. It's on every phone. It's on every computer. Everybody's carrying around the mark of the beast thanks to Google. And they even call that app Chrome 66. I was surprised to learn that, to be quite honest with you. I mean, they'll stop at nothing. And of course, these people are trying to plug in their Skynet into the Department of Defense as we speak. Project Maven, you probably heard a little bit about that. These tech companies, especially the ones out of California, Silicon Valley, they're trouble. They're punishment in disguise. And and they don't want people having free speech. They don't want people talking about the real issues. Instead, they want to use this technology to keep people busy and occupied and distracted until they can really roll out their Terminators and iRobots and the like. And it's basically a disaster waiting to happen. Google is another Fukushima waiting to happen, except this time it isn't just going to be radiation. It's going to be swarms of drones everywhere that's going to be coming out of this mayhem. I want to let Danny Ray make some closing statements about this, that, and the other, and we'll wrap this show up and prepare to cover the Inspector General that's going to be testifying before the House or the Senate Judiciary Committee, starting in 15 minutes, and we'll try and cover some of that. Talk about the bias of the FBI, the bias of the Department of Justice, as well as the shortcomings of this Inspector General in this report. And I think they're going to get a healthy grilling out there on C-SPAN and all the other networks, and so we'll be sure to cover that with everybody. Danny Ray, what do you want to say in closing about this disaster or the other things that are going on in the world at large?
Well, first, I'd like to say thanks for having me on here again, Ron. It's been quite a while since I've got to broadcast, so it was nice to get back on air. And you mentioned Google, who we all know owns YouTube now. They are the socialist media platforms. You're not allowed to speak truth on their platforms. If you do, you get copyright strikes, or you get shadow banned, or you get demonetized, or however they see fit to punish
standards.
You. Because,
they like to say community standards over there.
I'd like to see what their community looks like.
Sodom
because,
and Gomorrah.
Our community is a lot different, and they're always trying to shut it down.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. But the darkness is being exposed day by day by people who listen to, share, and comment on all of our videos. You guys are the blockchain out there, and there are more people every day waking up, and it's all because you take that time to plant these seeds and bring up the truth at every possible moment in time. It's really important for people like us to continue sharing the truth and shining the light on this darkness that is all over the world. I know we have listeners in every country, and we have listeners all over the place, and all because of you guys and getting involved in your community. And we're seeing changes. We're witnessing prayers being heard, and I like to bring up something that I was thinking about earlier. Last week we were covering how Bill Clinton had commented saying something along the lines of, we're not able to do things against people's will anymore. And, it's because of people like you. That's exactly why they're not allowed to just do things against people's will anymore, because we're everywhere, and we have this community, and we can stand up against evil and expose them. And you guys know how to do your own research and question these known liars. And because of your sharing the truth, and obviously all of the prayers out there for our nation and our leaders and each other, when stuff does hit the fan, I have a great feeling that there will be strong communities out there, and it's because we've we've all prepared each other and helped each other in every way possible, because there's a big reason, there's always a purpose behind what is happening, and we see our community growing daily, and it's all because each one has done their job to reach one. And the more that we expose everything that's going on in the dark, the brighter our future looks daily. So you guys continue to do what you're doing, and if you need some encouragement, you can stop by the Righteous Defiance page, and I'll be talking with you guys real soon. You guys stay blessed. Have a great day.
Much love to everybody out there, Righteous Defiance included, and people love truth and logic, plus a little passive-aggressive dark humor, and we try to give you guys tons of that. Appreciate everybody, tuning in, liking and sharing, all of that stuff. It makes it happen. Otherwise, we'd just be talking to ourselves, laughing, just amongst the three of us. But now we can all share in the fun. It looks like Yosef wants to have the last word. Yosef, please enlighten us. What else is going on over there?
Thank you, Ron, and thank you again for having me. And I'm blessed to be with you. And also, again, I agree with everything Danny Ray said. I just want to have the merit to say the same thing, which is thank you, everyone, for sharing and lighting up the world. And this goes, for me personally, this goes back to what my teacher, the Jewish leader, Rabbi Schneerson, said 20-something years ago, when he said that the way we're going to bring the redemption is by advertising and proclaiming the message. And at that time, it was before the internet even existed or was fully developed yet. We're talking about 1991. If you wanted to advertise, you needed to sell your house and buy a billboard in Manhattan for 30 days, and that was it. And then get a little bit of exposure. Today, everyone has it on the click, in the click of a button. They have it in their pocket for free. You can have such exposure to the world. You can really light up the world, and the Rebbe truly ahead of time. The Jewish people hold him as a prophet of our generation. Said that the way we're going to light up the world in this generation is by exposing the truth. So yes, I would like to join Danny Ray in thanking all of our fans and friends for spreading the light all over the world.
Wonderful, Yosef. Yosef is broadcasting live from the Holy Land right now, joining us live from the Holy Land. And of course, that stuff is kind of heating up over there. It looks like there's some more activity against terrorists out there, and there's all sorts of new terrorist tactics, dropping fire bombs into fields and causing forest fires or at least wildfires and the like. And so that's a situation that we'll be keeping an eye on, as well as other activities of terrorists.
Yep, and they just found an Iranian spy. It's not 100% confirmed yet, but it was allowed to go public. They found a spy within the Israeli government.
Yep.
From Iran.
We've put some details on that on our Twitter feed, so check us out over there at Stranger Than Fiction News. We got all sorts of news updates out there. And again, we try to bring in views from all around the world, except from California. Fuck California. And we'll definitely be broadcasting that earthquake. What?
Actually, I have a lot of good people that are over in California, so be careful of that. It's not everybody in California.
It's not everybody in California. We got a lot of fans in California. I'm actually surprised to see, where people are from. They offer those kind of features on these platforms, as you can imagine. They have your picture, your blood type, all of that stuff. And it's actually kind of interesting to see like how many people are actually tuning in from California. But I'm thinking there's a lot of haters that are tuning in too, losing their minds at every word that comes through the mic or through the speaker. But
there's good and bad people everywhere.
Yes, that's true. That's true. What did we say? Fuck California? We'll be covering that earthquake when it hits. Undoubtedly, they're long overdue. The natural separation of California from the mainland is just about everybody's wildest dreams, I think. In any case, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate y'all tuning in. Appreciate all the guests coming on. Appreciate the whole opportunity, of course, to be able to broadcast this message and more right here to the convenience of your device or home. In any case, until the next time, if you're listening to this, you are the resistance. You are the resistance.
We are Legion.